strategy that's going to work or it's not going to work.
And I think it's important to tell these guys that, you know, like a well-reviewed film in the New York Times can breathe life into
absolutely.
a $50,000 budgeted film.
Absolutely.
Just in terms of the domestic marketplace, I want just going back to Bangkok for and then the huge, even though it's overall very successful, even English Canada, it's high for what we're used to.
Yeah.
But still, the huge difference between it seems to me is the fact that the leads were very well established. Certainly, Huard was very well established property in Quebec. Everyone knew him. They had heard about the film and were anticipating him long in advance before the paid advertising started to get spent. Whereas when they started to spend the advertising dollars in the English market, the English market were not really ready to understand who Huard and Fior were. And that's a big thing. And if you're going to succeed, you're going to have to establish Rossif and Flex in the Canadian minds many months in advance of the paid advertising.
Well, we can talk about that often. But I agree with you. But the thing, the thing that you see over and over again as a distributor, and it's very frustrating, is that certain films beyond your understanding take on a life of their own.
Absolutely.
And you just don't understand how this sort of big lottery decides what film is going to get. And the interesting thing about Bon Cop, Bad Cop, and I have to hand it to Kevin and to Patrick, I guess, who came up with the original idea, is that for, I don't know, decades, somebody has been trying to do sort of a Two Solitudes type of film. And usually it was a drama, usually it was a Romeo and Juliet type story. And Patrick and Kevin sort of went to Guy Gagnon in Quebec and said, hey, let's do this Quebec thing, except as a buddy cop movie. So The Hook is fantastic because I think in Quebec, it's certainly everyone was interested in seeing the film. And my view is that the film skews a little bit more towards making fun of English people than it does French people. And I'm an English Quebecer. So, but I think that film just had a fantastic hook. In the case of Poor Boys Game, I think really the hook is excellent, and the hook is what originally attracted me to Poor Boys Game. Because the black community in Nova Scotia is one of the least known. It amazes me that I still talk to people and we go, oh, there are black people in Nova Scotia. It amazes me, and so that was one of the reasons. That was the hook that attracted me to this film. I said, come on, there's no cultural strife or no racial strife in Canada, and it's like, oh yeah, well, go and hang out at a bar in Halifax one night, and you'll see. So that's the original hook that kind of attracted me to that. What I think this film really is going to be dependent on, though, is the performance and the reviews. And originally, with our original marketing plan, it was more, I think, what you're talking about, Ralph, whereas it was going to be big, splashy, kind of 8-mile type marketing campaign. I'm not sure we can achieve that, and again, I haven't seen the cut yet, so I don't know. But I know right now what I'm planning on is to make sure that we work the PR extremely hard, that we get the critics on our side. And that was the other thing about Bon Cop, Bad Cop. I've heard people on radio shows on CBC just raving about it for days and days and days beforehand. And that's the kind of press that gets people, it's the word of mouth. Well, it was on English radio as well. It was on English national radio, and there was so much anticipation about this movie. I hope we can get the same thing for Poor Boys Game. God, I hope so. And I think basically the fact that it's illuminating a part of Canadian culture that really doesn't get enough, said about it. I think that's going to be our big hook. So that's my feeling.
We do have another question.
My question is, I'm not emerging young filmmaker. I'm just emerging old executive producer of a movie that we're going to be shooting in mid-March. My question is to tell film and John, the merits. I've been asked this question by young filmmakers. They're always really young about festivals. Your comments on the merits of being in festival in Toronto or anywhere else in the world, and your opinion, and certainly the circuit's opinion about festivals and the merits.
I think we'll start with John on that one. I'm sure Ralph and I do have an opinion, but we'll start with John.
A Canadian film in the Toronto Film Festival used to be a kiss of death, but the festival has evolved. As we all know, the festival's evolved and so incredibly well, and we've actually done extremely well. We released a film in Quebec. It was two years ago now, called White Skin, which bombed in Quebec. got here, won, you know, the best new feature. Yeah, and we went on to do, you know, relatively well in world sales. So it gave the film a whole new life, and obviously did very well for its director, Daniel Levy. So I think a big success, as we saw last year with Water, you know, a big success here in Toronto can really help the life of the film now. So I think it's completely changed. If Toronto doesn't want to take your film, you know, we've had a situation this year on a film where we weren't particularly happy with the slot we were getting for a particular film, so we decided not to do Toronto with this particular film. So I think, you know, it all depends, but I think a lot of films, particularly lower budget films, particularly films with much more serious sort of content in them, I think they live and die by their festival lines.
Ralph, did you want to say a few words?
Just remarks from two producers I've heard this week. Our festivals are a lot more fun if you have a film in the festival. Number two, festivals are a lot more fun if you win a prize at the festival. So I think that's, you know, if you do well at the festival, they will. I mean, they are one of the marketing tools. There are any number of marketing tools out of that. Clearly, I think festivals skew to more cinephile type of audience and don't necessarily get the mainstream, but sometimes in the case of Water, it clearly did have a good crossover. So they are an important tool in a range of tools for marketing.
From our standpoint, from an international sales point, we had a heavy metal documentary called Metal: A Headbanger's Journey here last year, which didn't win any awards, but it had an incredible sort of cult screening at Ryerson, and we went on, I think by the end of AFM we'd signed over $1 million of sales in the film that really just started, here in Toronto without any of the sort of hoopla or you know, getting any sort of critical, yes?
Oh, I just wanted to say, I think what's interesting is, David, maybe you can comment on this, was the live screening last year and how that created fantastic word of mouth buzz and what went on with Live With Me, and then perhaps comment, so you could comment on Live With Me, your experience shooting Live With Me, because that's a tremendously sexy film, and how that influenced making Four Boys Name. That's definitely one of the marketing hooks here as well.
I'd say the almost live sex party after the Live With Me really helped with sales too. Maybe more so than we know, but you know, it was certainly our intention to use that launch in Toronto last year just to sell the element which we knew was going to be sellable, which was the sexuality of the film, and we were really well prepared for that. And I think as a result, the film has gone on, you know, and made over $1 million in sales. So I would say that largely came out of two things. One was a sexy 5-minute promo reel that we had a professional editor cut together. I think that's something that buyers really like to see. And then the film played well in the festival environment. We had an excellent first night screening, so that was something that really helped it. And yeah, we did stack the deck a little bit. Well, having people there. You know, I think you want to make sure that you get a good spot in the festival. I think, you know, the buyers tend to be here in the first 5 days, and if you don't have that, make sure you get the materials as soon as possible after the festival, because the heat does tend to sort of drop off. And
Sorry.
one other thing I would say, what really helps a Canadian film to get attention to is to be in a well-placed festival outside of Canada, you know, like to be in a Sundance of Berlin or Cannes, because it seems like the Canadian press almost gives you more attention if you're one of the few that's lucky enough to be selected in